It's time for some One Piece theories. Because of One Piece's decade-long mysteries and tendency to drop clues and hints, foreshadowing reveals years in advance, One Piece theories have become a core part of the One Piece community. We all love a good One Piece theory. Some of us like a more plausible theory that seems so likely and jam-packed with foreshadowing and evidence that it feels like whoever came up with it has Oda's leaked script in their back pocket. Others are so wacky, insane, ridiculous, and completely out there, but somehow still make you think, you know what, it's just so crazy that it could be true. And as you can tell by some of our hours of theory videos on our channel, we love One Piece theories as well. We love making them, we love watching them, and we love discussing them. You know, I know this might sound corny, but the one thing about making a One Piece YouTube channel that I love even more than theories is the friends I've made along the way. Of course you guys, but also so many amazing One Piece content creators. And this is where I came up with an idea. What if I did one Oarz-sized mega collab where I reach out and get One Piece creators to each present one theory to create the greatest One Piece theory video ever? So without further ado, I present to you 10 insane One Piece theories featuring the best One Piece theorists. Alright, so before we jump into the first big theory, I have a bit of a quick surprise theory for us. Because recently after gathering the evidence, I've come to the conclusion that Atlas VPN is a true hero. A hero even surpassing the great GARP D Fist. That's right, this video is brought to you by Atlas VPN. I love making YouTube videos, but I've heard the horror stories of YouTubers being hacked by evil crypto hacking scammers. Luckily, thanks to Atlas VPN, I can maintain a calm headspace while working on new videos, as it blocks suspicious links and malware, spotting these frauds and notifying you when someone is trying to steal your data. So check out our Atlas VPN link in the description to make sure you're secure for a great deal of only $1.83 a month plus 3 months extra with a 30-day money-back guarantee. And how about last night when I hopped onto Netflix to find some new anime to binge? The only problem is it's annoying when Region is streaming services region lock us from checking out a specific anime or show because of where we're located. Luckily, Atlas VPN saves my day again, allowing us to transform into a Japanese man and check out Netflix Japan's unique library of shows. Once again, with its limited time summer deal, Atlas VPN Premium is only $1.83 per month, so protect your privacy and get many benefits of Atlas VPN for the ridiculously low price. Big thanks to Atlas VPN for sponsoring the video and coming in clutch. Now let's jump into our first mind-blowing theory. This first theory comes from a very special guest, an amazing energy and positive light on the entire One Piece community. Every time I've spoken with her, she's always been so kind. And when it comes to theories, she's one of the most underrated in the One Piece community. So let's check out what Joy Girl has cooked up for us.
The Gorosei and Imu have been the source for many a speculation over the years, especially when it comes to their strength and abilities. But with recent reveals hinting at the nature of their insane powers, there has never been a more perfect time to wonder what sort of abilities these scary figures are hiding. Chapter 1085 in particular, sparking a number of theories such as that Imu can either control ink or shadows, or the reveal of all the Gorosei's planetary names in chapter 1086, leading some to believe this will mean Imu represents the Earth. But I have another idea in mind. Hello my Nakamatachi, this is Joy Girl, and my latest theory is that Imu has the space fruit. We've recently discovered that Imu refers to themselves in third person. The term mu meaning void, emptiness, or nothing. And in my opinion, one way that this could be interpreted is that Imu represents the void, but by that, I mean Imu represents the vast expanse of outer space, which after all, is an almost perfect vacuum nearly void of matter. Let's take a look at that word, vacuum, shall we? Because I think this is the most perfect way to describe what we witnessed during the scuffle at Marineford. Sabo goes for the attack, his flames making a beeline towards Imu, only for his flames to quickly disappear, almost as if Imu devoured them. And well, if Imu's ability is in fact space-related, thereby meaning he's a near-perfect vacuum, devouring Sabo's flames sounds just about right. The incredible low pressure and absence of oxygen means that most elements and organisms, including fire, cannot survive in space, which would be fitting for an evil guy like Imu, who is increasingly giving final boss. In fact, in a world like One Piece where we have countless elemental-based abilities, a power inspired by space seems to be the perfect way to rule over all those abilities. This would also obviously mean that the planetary theme we have with the Gorosei and the ancient weapons is still relevant, or even Luffy's Sun God Devil Fruit. And here's where things get really interesting. While outer space can be a very ominous, overwhelming force that not much else can overcome or survive, something that is able to withstand the extreme environments of outer space and is an important element used for aerospace inventions is rubber. In fact, a refinement of synthetic rubber was a big factor in making it possible for humans to reach the moon, meaning that Imu's natural enemy would be none other than Monkey D. Luffy with his Gomu Gomu no Mi. And if we're to look at it from a space perspective, Luffy's Devil Fruit as Sun God Nika is also relevant, because the sun is the brightest natural object in our solar system, providing light against the dark, limitless expanse of space, meaning that as the holder of a Devil Fruit that has both the elastic properties of rubber and an awakened form of the Sun God Nika, Luffy definitely would be the biggest threat against Imu and their space-related abilities. And isn't that a new way to consider what the Gorosei meant when they said that Luffy has the most ridiculous power in the world? But that's it from me. We'll see how long it takes for Imu's power to be fully revealed.
Thank you so much, Joy Girl. I really do like that theory. And I know you said Imu is giving final boss energy, but I can't help but to wonder how crazy it would be if Blackbeard got his hands on this space fruit as his third and final devil fruit, taking it from Imu and pairing it with his Yami Yami no Mi, because that would be busted. But regardless, I love the idea of a space fruit, and it just makes sense for it to be in the hands of someone as powerful like Imu. Up next, we have an amazing friend of the channel. A lot of you guys don't know this, but I've known this man since very early in his YouTube journey, and he actually edited for me when he first got started. I'm forever grateful to him because, quite frankly, his editing is fire. I consider him a friend, someone I can always go to advice for on YouTube related topics, and someone who has a great mind when it comes to One Piece theories. And it's been amazing seeing his channel grow from less than 1,000 subscribers to where he is at now. I present to you Dex Sake.
The theory that I'm going to talk about is why Pluton is a mole. If you haven't heard this before, then you're probably wondering how that can even be true when it was said to be a battleship capable of destroying an island in a single blast. But the truth is that a ship is anything that can get you island to island. I mean, just ask San Juan Wolf, whose epithet is literally the colossal battleship. He is a giant who ate the huge fruit, which allows him to walk on the bottom of the ocean somehow, thus earning him that name. Plus, Sukiyaki said that Pluton was sleeping under Wano, which hints right away that Pluton should be a living thing. But why a mole? Well, one of, if not the best way to travel in One Piece is by digging underground. You get to avoid all the crazy weather as well as anyone sailing on the sea. We saw this during Gadatsu's cover story with a giant mole named the Boss of the Earth, whose name in and of itself could be a foreshadowing for the god of the underworld, Pluton. But Gadatsu was able to ride this mole from Ukari Island to Alabasta by digging underground. Taurus even used the tunnels afterward because Ukari had hot springs there and people wanted to visit, and this eliminated the need to worry about traveling over the open seas. But what's interesting about this mole is that his helmet had Mount Fuji on it in front of a traditional Japanese sun, the same one that you would see on the red rising sun flag. And the fact that Mount Fuji is there is really interesting because, like I mentioned earlier, Pluton is currently sitting under Wano, currently sitting under what's really called the Mole Port, or Mogura Port in Japanese. This is the port that was deep beneath Wano that helps ships avoid going up the waterfall. And if you think about it, this port must be the oldest one out of all of them because we know that Wano flooded over time, forcing them to build settlements up above that we saw throughout the arc. So that port that's down below was probably needed first in order to take supplies, ships, people, etc. up to those new settlements to build the other ones in the first place. I wouldn't be shocked if they just named the port after the giant creature beneath them, the one who seemingly necessitated the walls being put up in the first place. Now, do I think it's as simple as just some kind of mole? I mean, it could be, but I think at a minimum it would be a modified mole, either either a ship with a mole devil fruit, or maybe a mole that was just modified like Laboon was. Both of these ideas kind of end up at the same point, but it's just two different ways of going about it. Because for it to be a ship, people would need to board it somehow so they can go island to island. But Gedatsu was able to do that by just jumping inside that mole's helmet. So it could be as simple as that too. I even think there's a good chance that Pluton dug tunnels throughout the world a long time ago, providing a network to travel through that's faster and safer than sailing on the seas. And maybe that even had a role in how the poneglyphs were spread throughout the world. If you want to hear more about these ideas, I do have a few videos on my channel, but the last thing I want to say is subscribe to Preach.
Shout out to Deck, man. I love the theory and I can't wait to see if it comes true. Alright, so this next theory comes from a man who goes by Mr. Bushido. He was actually the first I remember on our channel, and I've even collabed with him a few times on theory videos. He has a bunch of interesting ideas, so shout out to him. He's been amazing, and I'll be presenting this one for him as he doesn't have a YouTube channel. So this theory revolves around the idea that God Valley is One Piece's version of the Garden of Eden. We know from Kuma that the Bible exists in One Piece, and many religious references throughout the entire story. A valley is a natural garden which is not produced by man, and Eden is God's territory. Now if we take the rule of three, a literary device that groups three separate things together, in One Piece we already have the Adam tree and the Eve tree, two trees that are both tied to the Garden of Eden in the Bible, where the story of Adam and Eve takes place. This was the story where they were the first humans who ate the sinning fruit from a tree of knowledge, committing the first sin. So with an Adam and Eve tree, and assuming there could be one more tree with a religious connection in One Piece to fulfill the rule of three, what would the third tree be? Well, what about an Eden tree that was at God Valley? And tying it back to the fruit in the story, what if this Eden tree was the tree where devil fruits originate from? Or what if this is a tree that held many powerful and specifically godly fruits like mythical zones, like Kaido's fruit, which we know that he ate at God Valley that day? Or what if Whitebeard acquired the godly power of the Gura Gura no Mi and Marco's Phoenix fruit, which he gave to his first mate later on? Maybe even Luffy and Blackbeard's Nika and Yami Yami no Mi were both on this Eden tree at that one point. It's interesting that Garland Figureland was also stated to be the king and judge of God Valley. And in the official viz, it specifically states that Figureland was a dominating figure who distinguished himself at God Valley. But why Figureland is so important here is because when we break down his name, it means land of figs, Figureland. And this is another reference to Eden, since the land of figs is the Garden of Eden. We can know this because fig leaves is a famous idiom that means covering up something embarrassing, and this is once again going back to the story of Adam and Eve, because they use fig leaves to cover up their private parts and nudity from embarrassment. And fig leaves are actually common and known throughout the world. It is used to hide shame. Mr. Bushido explains that he believes all devil fruits once existed at God Valley. We know Rocksteady Zebek had a goal of conquering the world and becoming king, and we know God Valley was an event that was this huge like heist operation, and so maybe these devil fruits are what the Rocks pirates were after. What if Rocksteady Zebek was one of the first people outside the world government to obtain a devil fruit, and after finding out about this Eden tree, he began to plan his attack directly against the world government? And this theory takes an even crazier turn with Mr. Bushido explaining the possible importance of slaves, which we know were at God Valley alongside celestial dragons. He explains how the celestial dragons may have used slaves to tend and grow these fruits. And if this theory is true, it would also explain why GARP was forced to defend celestial dragons and their slaves, fighting alongside Figureland, because if someone as powerful as the Rock's pirates got a hold of all these devil fruits, it would have been an absolute disaster. They would have way too much power and influence over the world. It would just be nuts if all the Rock's pirates except Big Mom and Rocks got their fruits at God Valley. And I'm assuming Rocks was sort of essentially the previous pirate king before Roger, and from what we saw in the anime, it seems his fleet was massive. It's also interesting if we consider Blackbeard as the modern day Zebek, like how Luffy will be the modern day Roger. And since we know Blackbeard is a devil fruit connoisseur going after specific devil fruits, it would be really interesting if Zebek also had the similar ambition and lust for powerful devil fruits as well. And I just want to add that this would be a really cool contrast if the Rock's pirates all had devil fruits and then Roger, Rayleigh, Garland Figureland, and GARP did not have devil fruits. Essentially everyone who fought against them did not have fruits. Now the one thing I disagree with here is that I don't believe the world government was hoarding every devil fruit here, because we know the world government had been trying to get their hands on the Nika fruit, which had always been avoiding them. And we also know that Big Mom already had her own devil fruit, and so I think with a small tweak that God Valley had many godly and powerful devil fruits being hidden here, it still fits with this theory and would be such a piratey story for Zebek and his crew. Overall, shout out to Mr. Bushido. I love this theory and many of these ideas. So the first person I actually asked for this video was of course the Wizard of Oarz. You know, some people don't know this, but this channel is actually 2 people, Breach and Wizard of Oarz. I seriously couldn't do this YouTube thing without him, and it allows us to hold each other accountable and continue the YouTube grind together. He's a great friend and also an amazing elite tier One Piece theorist, so I just can't wait to hear what he's cooked up for us.
One of the biggest debates upon the power scaling community of One Piece is whether Mihawk does or does not have Conqueror's Haki. Whichever the answer is, it will truly be able to tell us if he's on the same level of Shanks or not. I personally believe that he does have it, and I know that that isn't too much of a complex theory or anything. However, the reasons why I believe it may surprise you, since it seems Oda already told us the answer to this question back in the East Blue Saga. However, before I explain that, let me first tell you why people think he doesn't have it. So one of the main reasons people think Mihawk doesn't have Conqueror's Haki is because he's a complete solo act. We know Mihawk for being the guy that doesn't have a single crew member, and if we take a look at Conqueror's Haki users, one of their main abilities is to be very likable and very good leaders. They tend to be the person who gathers people around and brings people together to be led by them. My argument for this with Mihawk is the fact that we don't really know if people don't like him. Like, what if he doesn't have any crew members simply because he likes to roam freely by himself? Maybe he declines anyone that tries to join him because he simply likes it that way. Now, another reason people also say they think he isn't a conqueror is because they think he has no ambition or motivation since he joined the warlords to be left alone and to live freely. Yet again, I'd counter this argument with the fact that he actually does have ambitions, and actually arguably one of the greatest ambitions in the story, which is to not only become but also remain the strongest swordsman in the world. I feel like his dream has already been accomplished, which is to be the world's strongest swordsman, which is why he seems to come off as lazy or undriven. He currently doesn't really need to prove himself to anyone, so he doesn't. And so now that I explained why people believe this, now let me tell you how Oda already confirmed Mihawk is a conqueror back in Baratier. So in chapter 48, Gin from the Don Creek Pirate says that Mihawk has piercing hawk eyes that could kill with a glance. Now, isn't this pretty much exactly what Conqueror's Haki does? Don't Conqueror's Haki users have eyes that could kill with a glance when they use Conquerors? For example, when Shanks uses Conqueror's Haki on the Sea King of Fuchsia Village, he has eyes that could kill with a glance and scares off the Sea King with his glance alone. When Ray Lee uses Conqueror's Haki, we see Oda draw a panel of his eye that kills with a glance since he knocks out an entire area of fodder with his glare. Luffy does the same sort of thing in Fishman Island, and knowing this, we could only assume that Gin described Mihawk as this because he witnessed his intense glance or glare that seemed to kill the entire Don Creek fleet. Let me know what you guys think about this description of Mihawk in the comments. And now another reason I know he's a conqueror and on the level of guys like Shanks and Kaido is simply because he wields Yordu around. Just by its design, I know Yordu is probably the most powerful sword in the entire world. If it's not number 1, then it has to at least be top 3, and with this, I assume that Mihawk has to have Conqueror's Haki just to be able to use it. The reason for this is because we see in the Wano arc that great blades can see into the swordsman, and that the best blades only choose the best swordsman who best suits it. We see that Enma chose Zoro to test him, and knowing this, we could only assume that the same exact thing happened to Mihawk and Yordu. Knowing that Zoro needed a bare minimum of Conqueror's Haki to be able to wield Enma around to his own will, Mihawk had to have had a lot more than just that to be able to wield Yordu around. The reason I think this is because we saw what Enma was doing to Zoro during the King fight when it almost killed him, and remember, Enma is only a great grade blade. Imagine how much Haki a supreme grade blade, and specifically this supreme grade blade, drains from you, and imagine how much willpower and strength you need to be able to wield one effortlessly. With this, I'd say that when Yordu chose Mihawk, he was on the level of strength of the Yonko. Mihawk had to be a mastered Conqueror's Haki user in order to conquer such a blade.
Well, Oarz, that's definitely going to piss off the Shanks fanboys. And by the way, make sure you subscribe to our channel because Wizard of Oarz is doing his face reveal and live reactions to chapters at 50,000 subscribers. And if you enjoyed the video so far, make sure you hit the like button. Up next, we have Hidden Island, someone who I really haven't got much of a chance to talk to yet, but he's someone who's really inspired me lately as someone who's given back in the best way possible. Recently, he's had me on his channel where he did a great job setting up and hosting an amazing One Piece charity event, raising thousands of dollars towards fighting cancer. And he also likes making a One Piece theory video, so let's check out what he's cooked up for us today.
So I don't have any big, major, mind-blowing theories, but I do have a smaller one that's probably going to be appropriate considering Elbaf is coming up soon. And this theory is about Usopp. It's basically about what's going to happen to Usopp by the end of the story. And The theory is basically this, that Usopp is essentially walking backwards in Noland's footsteps. He is the inverse of Mont Blanc Noland, and whereas Noland was framed as a liar, he was a hero, he was a genuine hero and a brave warrior of the sea who was framed as a liar. We have now Usopp, who is truly a liar, who is going to have this metamorphosis and become a brave warrior of the sea. Or maybe he will always be a liar, and by the end of the story, he's going to be remembered as a brave warrior of the sea. Maybe the tall tales of Usopp will be told, and people won't be able to discern whether or not they were true, just like with Mont Blanc Noland, where people thought he was a liar, even though that couldn't be further from the truth. So it's going to be the inversion of Mont Blanc Noland, and I believe this means that Usopp is also going to be getting a storybook of his own. But why do I think that's going to happen? Well, basically, the idea goes like this. Love him or hate him, Oda has a very clear intention with Usopp's character. He designed this character visually as a reference to Pinocchio, a very popular children's story about lying. He referenced the boy who cried wolf in Usopp's backstory. He referenced a wolf in sheep's clothing as well through Captain Kuro. And what's interesting about those two stories is that those also are part of a greater story, or rather a greater subject, which would be Aesop's fables. So Aesop was a real guy who told stories back in the day, and a lot of those stories that you may recognize as like standard children's stories today, they were told long ago in ancient Greece by this man, Aesop, and that is who Usopp is based off of. So we have Aesop's fables, we have Usopp. Usopp wants to go to Elbaf, which is fables spelled backwards. I mean, the story is kind of being laid out for us, and I think the conclusion this is all supposed to lead to is that Usopp is going to have a storybook of his own. How is he going to become a brave warrior of the sea? He's going to get his own storybook, just like Mont Blanc Noland did, because we have all these real-life fictional characters that are like these fictional liars that Usopp references in his design and in his story, and then Oda chooses to do something very interesting, and he introduces his own liar. He brings his own fictional liar character to the table. Mont Blanc Noland is basically the Pinocchio or the boy who cried wolf for the people of the One Piece world. They don't have Aesop's fables. They only have Usopp, and they only have Noland, and these are Oda's versions of those stories, and Noland is his original liar's tale, used to tell children to stay wary of liars and to not lie themselves or else they'll be punished or whatever. You know, the standard fare, the typical type of story of this kind. I think Usopp's going to get his own story, and I think it's through that story that he's going to be immortalized as a brave warrior of the sea, even though we who followed him through the whole adventure, we know what Usopp was really like. Just like we who also followed Noland's adventure, we know what Noland was really like. It may not be perfectly accurate to what the storybooks say, but it's the message that's left behind, I think, that is going to impact us the most, and I think that it's the most important part of it. And Noland's message was unfortunately tarnished. He was used as a lesson to teach people the wrongs of lying, and his story was changed to kind of fit this narrative that Noland was a bad guy. And I think that Usopp is going to live in his shoes, except he's going to do the opposite. He's actually going to have a successful story. He's going to kind of fulfill the legacy that Noland should have left behind, and Usopp's going to do it maybe with his own tall tales. Maybe the stories actually aren't going to be true, but at the end of the day, he's going to set a role model for people in the future for how to lie properly. What is a good liar, you know? How do you lie in a way that helps people? That, I think, is Usopp's greatest characteristic, Usopp being a noble liar. And that's why I would recommend you check out my newest theory, Usopp's Fables, The Power of a Noble Liar. I do think it is his best character trait. I think that's what Oda's going for, and I do think that at the end of the story, Usopp's going to have his very own picture book, like Vicky the Viking or whatever, and he's going to be the main character in that, and, you know, some Elbaf warrior who did a great deed and saved a bunch of people, and some amazing story about some hero named Usopp.
Once again, big thanks to Hidden Island for joining this theory mega collab, and I'll say that's probably the greatest Usopp theory I've ever heard. Alright, so this next theory comes from Joe School's Theories on Twitter. I'll be presenting it for him, but make sure to go give him a follow over there for great One Piece theories. I'll leave the link in the description. Chapters 1085 and 1086 have recently made references back to the Obi Opi no Mi, the meaning of the initial D, and the subject of the Checkered Fate. Today we'll be focusing on the Checkered Fate, what it means, who it applies to, and what it will will lead to. It would naturally seem like Law is a character who this applies to most, as it was introduced back in chapter 798 through a conversation between Sengoku and Law about Corazon. However, the recent dialogue in chapter 1086 tells us otherwise. It's actually Sabo who is at the center of this plot, so let's jump right into it. In chapter 1086, the Godosei are speculating and theorizing on the checkered fate, as one of them says, "Yeah, another one. The D always follow a checkered fate." From this alone, we can begin to understand that the checkered fate connects directly to the meaning and purpose of the D clan. But does that mean that Sabo is really a D clan member? That answer lies in the wording. It said that Sabo has the checkered fate, while it said that the D clan follows the checkered fate. And this would mean that those who have the checkered fate are effectively individuals that those with the initial D seem to always end up following. I believe the significance of the Sa Debo flashback is not meant to be taken literally that Sabo is a member of the D clan, but to indicate that it was originally possible for the leaders of the D clan members to initiate new members. And it's implied that this is how Nefertari Lily also became a Will of D member, as a parallel to Sabo. And now if we look at Sabo and Lily, they both came from a very high nobility status, but left it to join Joy Boy in the D clan. We know Sabo was friends with Luffy, and I'm assuming that Lily was also friends with Joy Boy. And Joe and I have discussed this idea. We both agree that this scene is basically foretelling and foreshadowing that Sabo will eventually join the D clan as well, similar to Lily. And through this, we'll also find out what that checkered fate is. Personally, I believe that Sabo is already a D member, but I really love Joe's idea that this was only foreshadowing to Sabo becoming a D member at the end of One Piece. So if Sabo has the checkered fate and characters like Law with the initial D always follow the checkered fate, what does that really mean? The best indication that we have comes from another piece of dialogue from chapter 1085, when Imu was answering Cobra's questions about the mystery of his ancestor Nefertari Lily. It was explained that the D is the moniker or the title of the ancient enemy of the celestial dragons. Many people will already have noticed that this is a callback to the scene from Law's flashback between him and Corazon, where Corazon explains that those with the D are God's natural enemy. Imu then goes on to explain that although the initial D has begun to appear more and often again, those who bear the initial D no longer understand the meaning of their own name. The word meaning comes up here both in Checkered Fate's concept and the mystery surrounding the true history and the meaning of the initial D, and it's likely to be a hint that those two concepts are actually one and the same. The meaning of the Checkered Fate may also be those who bear will be responsible for guiding the D clan to learn the true history and rediscovering their name. Then how could he accomplish this? Doesn't the One Piece have to be found before the truth can be learned? Not necessarily. In chapter 218, we flash back to Robin speaking with Cobra about the true history, and there was supposedly the real poneglyph that would reveal the truth. It was this that originally led Cobra to wanting to question the Godosei about the poneglyphs. Much later during Whole Cake Island in chapter 846, we learned that there are 9 of these real poneglyphs, and together they combine to reveal the truth. And so far we have confirmation of at least 4 of these 9 real poneglyphs, but around half of them remain to be found. And that is likely to become Sabo's main quest. In pursuing this, he would naturally end up crossing paths with Robin and Law, who both already seek this truth for their own shared dream. So Sabo's main role going forward will be to likely become a guide for members of the D clan such as Luffy, Law, Vivi, and to discover the truth of their name. And with Cobra's final words bringing up Vivi and Luffy having the D, and telling Sabo to tell them the truth about their connection, it seems like Sabo could be the one to bring Luffy and Vivi together. If the checkered fate is defined by those who are always surrounded by those who bear the initial D, then Robin surely can share this fate as well. Because throughout her life, Robin has been affected by Jaguar D Sao, Monkey D Luffy, Nefertari D Cobra, Monkey D Dragon, Trafalgar D Water Law, and then also a friend of Sabo. It is no coincidence that Robin is known by the Revolutionary Army as the Flame of the Revolution, the one who's inspired the events that will eventually lead to the downfall of the world government. And this will mean that it's also not a coincidence that Sabo recently used this same phrase, the Flames of Revolution, in chapter 1083. The fact that Robin and Sabo share the association with the checkered fate and the Flames of Revolution most likely means that their main role could be what leads to an alliance among the remnants of the D clan to fulfill and rediscover their shared objective. This will essentially be the final stage of revolution, the foretold storm, as Law tells us again in chapter 729 that the D will always bring a storm. You see, when I talked to Joe and discussed this earlier, we agreed that it seems that Sabo essentially is destined to follow the example set by Lily and to enable the D clan to fulfill the task that's left in the letter. Overall, it seems like Sabo's checkered fate means that he's destined to lead the D clan towards the true history and rediscovering the meaning of the initial D, because Sabo shares this fate with characters like Robin, and together they both represent the Flames of the Revolution. Nico Robin, we know why she's the flame as the burning of O'Hara, but also Sabo being a more symbolic and literal sense of the flame with his flame flame fruits. Guys, make sure that you go and check out Joe on Twitter. He's always supported me and my channel since very early on, and he's my personal favorite Twitter theorist, always coming up with evidence to back up his takes and theories. Next up, we have someone who I've spoken to many times, and you know what I love about this person is that we could debate a theory or idea or any One Piece topic, and he doesn't take it personal. We keep it civil, we always keep it moving, we always have a great conversation. Someone who appreciates an in-depth discussion where we can both poke holes at each other's ideas and usually ends up making the theory better because we both find counter arguments or ways around the point we both bring up. It's always intellectually stimulating and just so fun talking to this person about One Piece. And so I'm excited to present to you Vision.
This secret One Piece power might have been hidden within a Devil Fruit awakening. So the Opi Opi no Mi that Law has is one of the most versatile fruits in the sense that it just feels like you can do anything with it, regardless of what has actually been shown. Especially now that Law has demonstrated the awakening for his fruit where he's able to use Kroom, which so far involves him creating a room bubble, but applying it to his sword, and thereafter the sword can extend and phase through objects. Then if he uses Shock V-Ray, he shoots an electric surge through the blade affecting anything he pierced. I think rather than all of these things being all a part of his Devil Fruit ability, there's actually 3 separate things going on. I'm not going to touch on the Gamma Knife Shock V-Ray side of things, but if you're familiar with my channel and my hockey theories, it's self-explanatory. The 2 things I want to separate out was the phasing and sword extension. See, what I think makes the most sense is Law's Kroom is creating a room where anything inside the bubble can phase through objects outside of the bubble. That would be a very understandable extension of Law's normal Paramecia abilities. Being able to extend his sword through the same ability sounds weird, especially because most of Law's Opi Opi abilities relate to medical procedures, and sword enlargement isn't exactly something that exists. You could explain the sword extension through another power being highlighted right now: Cursed Swords. Law has the Kikoku, an unknown grade blade that was confirmed to be cursed in the SBS, and if you've seen my previous videos, then you know what I'm getting at here. I think cursed blades are blades with special properties, like how the Enma can forcefully exude its user's haki, but also the Sandai Katetsu was set to cut more than it was intended. The Shusui had a similar thing that was subtly mentioned in that it felt heavy to Zoro and said that in order to properly wield it, he needed to master it. And then we get to Zombie Ryuma talking about how the Shusui would be satisfied with Zoro as its master, which in the context of what Kozuburo said would mean that the Shusui probably accepts Zoro. Thereafter, he just had to bend it to his will. So the heaviness that Ryuma accessed is something that Zoro was also able to access. And I know that the Shusui is not considered a cursed blade, but technically neither is the Enma, and it might be due to the fact that its wielders didn't die because of the blade itself. And so now going back to Law's Kikoku, I think through some means it's able to extend based off of Law's will because he had mastered the Kikoku, which you're probably wondering, wait, if that was the case, why hasn't he done this before? Well, it wouldn't really benefit Law to be swinging around a massive sword. As far as cursed blades go, imagine if the blade just randomly extended during a battle. That would definitely be a way to get the user killed. So the reason why Law is finally using it is because it's in tandem with his awakening, which is perfect for his ability because his ability makes it so that the sword is rendered essentially weightless regardless of its size, because it's now in a state that allows it to phase through all physical matter. But at the same time, because of Law's combination of abilities here, he is able to use the sword and his awakening to the maximum potential. And all of this makes perfect sense to be something Oda continues to expand on as he has been doing with swords in the background, where it will most likely come together in the last saga when we reach supreme grade cursed blades like the Shodai Katetsu and other sword users like Mihawk and the Holy Knights like Garland Garling, further increasing the difficulty and complexity of Zoro's path towards the world's strongest swordsman, something I've discussed in my Zoro, Mihawk, and Holy Knight theories.
I really like the idea that maybe the sword could sense that Law had the potential to master his Devil Fruit awakening and therefore master the blade itself and utilize it to its full potential. It's a fire theory, and I never even knew that Law's sword was a cursed blade until now. Big shout out to Vision, go check him out. Rock's review. I'm a huge fan of his shorts on YouTube, and his energy in his videos is always on point. Another person who's always shown love to us, always been very welcoming and open to collabs, so let's check out what he's cooked up for us here.
Hello Preach and other YouTubers who are probably doing a way better job than me. Sorry, but I'm gonna talk about 2 theories. One of them, I came up with it as soon as I could have came up with it, and the other one, I did not came up with it. I'm gonna start from number 2. This theory is clearly not mine because this is actually actually very smart. It's about the One Piece itself, and probably most of you already heard about it. You see, there is a famous prophecy that one day Luffy will destroy Fishman Island, and I believe that's true. The theory goes on to say that one day, after Luffy destroyed Imsama and the world government, he shall destroy the Red Line itself. Before doing this, he's gonna allow everybody from the Fishman Island go inside of the giant ship Noah and save all of them from the ultimate destruction. And after that, he's gonna destroy the Red Line, and since Fishman Island is under the Red Line, the prophecy will come true, and Fishman Island will be destroyed by the hand of Luffy. But after the Red Line is destroyed, all the 4 oceans of One Piece world, north, south, west, and east, will come together. This will create an ocean that every type of fish in the world exists. This is gonna be all blue and One Piece itself. The moral of One Piece's story is a struggle between freedom and authority. Destruction of the Red Line and 4 seas coming together is the perfect symbolism for the final act of One Piece's story. And now let's talk about my own theory. If you know me and my channel, you know that I am a firm believer in Conqueror's Haki ultimate supremacy. And I definitely believe that Oda is not done giving us the hype of this power. And to prove this, let's go back to chapter 10:10. After years of waiting, Zoro finally used Ashura and gave the ultimate scar to Kaido. Have you ever wondered what the hell is Ashura? I mean, it's not really fair to assume. This is a type of power that only and only Zoro can use it, as if Oda created this power only for the sake of Zoro. No, this should be part of the bigger magic system. What if the final form of Conqueror's Haki is awakening a demon or a god inside you? And if this be true, we can have a lot of badass final attack and mythology from all around the world in One Piece. Maybe all the top gods of One Piece have one hidden god in them. Ashura is a glimpse of the final form of power in One Piece world, and I believe, going by evidence, this can actually make perfect sense. Because after all, only a Conqueror Haki based attack can give an ultimate scar to Kaido. So am I really delusional? Probably yes.
Listen, Rocks, that second theory was legit, man. Pretty dang good because, you know, I'm a Zoro standboy, so I gotta say, you've got me insanely hyped for this Demon Ashura Haki form to come true. And to all my Sanji fans, yeah, Sanji's not beating that form. This next creator has the most recognizable and distinct voice in all of YouTube history. Sometimes I just throw him on and listen to his videos like it's a podcast. We haven't spoken much privately, but he's someone who I looked up to as I was coming up in the YouTube scene, as I watched him grow at a rapid rate. And that is Vinland D.
Dragons fight for freedom, revolution. I can't wait to see the things he has done and potentially get an explanation as to why he abandoned his son as a child. Assumed since Luffy doesn't seem to recognize his own father's face. Dragon appears to have not been around for the vast majority of Luffy's life. Very similar then to Ace's relationship with his own father, Roger. Even more curious given Dragon was also at Roger's execution. But for those that like to claim Dragon is a bad father, I'd like to go over a shocking idea I introduced in the past in a video that may or may not be on the channel any longer. That Monkey D. Dragon, for all his faults as a man or a father, has actually been watching over his son Luffy all this time. I can sum it up by saying this. Just as Luffy is the sun, shining down and spreading light wherever he goes, the bringer of dawn, just as Imu might be Mother Nature and the very sea itself, the very world, the earth. Dragon is the wind. He is everywhere all at once. During Impel Down, chapter 539, around the onset of the Marineford War, Ivankov tells us that Dragon is pulling the strings behind all the revolutionaries and likely revolutions around the world, just as the wind is everywhere. Aside from marveling at Luffy's similar willpower to his father, Luffy tells Ivankov that he was born in East Blue. This takes us to a flashback of Ivankov and Dragon. We see Ivankov say to Dragon, "Whenever the wind blows, wherever you are, you're always facing the same way." And Dragon responds by saying in a dismissive fashion, whether hiding something or not, that he's never noticed that himself. While Ivankov suggests it could be Dragon's animal instinct, and I'd say it's Dragon's fatherly instinct, as Ivankov asks Dragon if his home is in that direction, the direction Dragon is always facing when the wind blows. that perhaps he has a family in the eastern seas, East Blue. But the conversation ends as Dragon seems awfully protective of his past and doesn't want to comment further. This takes us to a connection I made for Chapter 1, that we were in fact introduced to Monkey D. Dragon for the very first time in Chapter 1, not in Chapter 100 as some might believe. After Roger's execution, we go to another page, a small seaport, where we see Shanks' pirate ship guided to a small peaceful village by the wind, the east wind that is blowing. Could it be that Dragon has always been watching over his son? The east wind we see during Chapter 1 is the same east wind that Ivankov said Dragon is always facing. If Dragon is the wind, could he not be anywhere he wants to be? Or if you can combine observation hotkey with your devil fruit as Enel did with his lightning Logia to observe an entire island during Skypiea, could Monkey D. Dragon combine his observation hotkey with the wind to see events across the world? Wherever the wind blows, Dragon is there. And so Dragon has always been by Luffy's side. He's always watched over his son. And the fact that Oda placed the east wind by Shanks Jolly Roger in this panel here, the fact that Shanks and Roger are shown side by side in this other panel here on the screen during Roger's execution, I wonder what sort of relationship these two men have, Shanks and Dragon. One a father figure, the other Luffy's biological father. Luffy is very similar to both of these men. And so Dragon is the wind. He has always been watching over his son. We see this in Chapter 99, where it seems like a bolt of lightning from a sudden change in weather saves Luffy. Perhaps Dragon brought a storm, or it really was just a lucky storm. But Dragon does save Luffy from Smoker, and it can't be a coincidence he just so happened to be at Logtown, can it? The same day as Luffy. That Dragon just so happened to run into Luffy and Smoker. And thereafter a gust of wind blows and a storm carries Luffy and the Straw Hats on their way. A journey that Dragon seems to approve of, since he questions what right anyone has to stop another from setting sail, from being free. Since Dragon says the day will eventually come when he and his son Luffy meet again, and given Dragon's current importance and reintroduction to the storyline via the destruction of Lucia Kingdom and Vegapunk's flashback with him and O'Hara, I think that day is finally here. As we see from Chapter 1078, that another war is about to start. The force heading to Egghead Island now is said to be on the same scale as a war. The way this scene is depicted is strikingly similar to Marineford, the narrator's proclamation that the conclusion of the Egghead incident will shock the world in a way no one has imagined, and that the Egghead incident will change the world, just as Dragon said he would one day do. Dragon's growing relevance and parallels to Marineford that are reinforced by Chapter 1080 and GARP's entrance to Beehive Island being similar to how Luffy fell from that ship in the sky during Marineford when going to rescue Ace, as we see GARP descend or jump from the ship that is flying in the air somehow, down upon Beehive Island with his galactic punch. In Chapter 539, Ivankov even hinted at the destruction Dragon would bring to Marineford if his son was ever in danger. The combined wrath of Whitebeard and Dragon, though Dragon never showed. Now with Luffy in danger once again on Egghead Island, Oda's doing this for a reason, I believe, and I think that reason is a legendary introduction of Dragon as he finally makes his move. The legend begins as Chapter 100. When will the legend arrive? Dragon either arriving like Shanks did during Marineford out of nowhere, or Luffy being saved again by a bolt of lightning, or like Dragon once did to save Luffy from Smoker, or maybe Dragon arriving like Whitebeard. Imagine if Dragon's ship can also fly, completing the trifecta of 3 Monkey Ds falling from the sky, if Dragon really can control the wind. Or imagine a massive storm approaching Egghead Island, since the D will always bring another storm. Imagine if the Pirate King Goldie Roger really was saved from the Golden Lion Shiki's fleet by a storm created out of nowhere by Dragon. Even if it wasn't Dragon, imagine if Dragon summons a storm to destroy all the Marines and government ships currently surrounding Egghead Island. Imagine if Dragon is about to usher in the greatest storm we have yet seen in the story. But as usual, we will have to wait and see.
You know, I actually love this theory. I also have a similar idea, but a little different, that dragon represents a storm and not the wind in One Piece. But after you explain everything, I really could see it being just specifically the wind. And after watching this theory, it really just got me truly excited to finally see Monkey D. Dragon in the final saga. And shout out to Vinland D, make sure that you go and check him out. This next dude is a really humble guy. You know, I've gotten to speak to him multiple times, on stream, off stream. I like how he's willing to learn and ask questions to bigger creators. And if you know me, you know I love talking about anything regarding YouTube. So when this guy first hit me up asking for advice, we had a great conversation. And he's always been great to me ever since. This man specializes in One Piece theories, so let's hear what Den Den Kushi has for us.
Yo, it's Den Den Kushi. You know what it is. We're up here with Preach, smashing the theories, so let's get straight into it. The first clue to the location of God Valley is in its name. The definition of the word valley is a low area of land between hills or mountains, typically with a river or stream flowing through it. This describes the only picture of God Valley we've seen. The word valley originates from Nordic myth, something we know Oda has tied to the story many times. When we look at what the word originally was, we discover something very interesting. It's a ford, spelled F-J-O-R-D, again describing a deep, narrow, elongated sea or lake with steep land on three sides. If you watch someone say ford on TV, sometimes the subtitles will still use this spelling. The English version of this word is ford, so F-J-O-R-D without the J. The definition of the word has warped over time, now being a ford is a shallow place in a river or a stream allowing one to walk or drive across. Where can we find the word ford in One Piece? Marineford. So if valley is ford, then what about the god part of God Valley? Well, for starters, Kuma was at Marineford and he held a Bible there. Luffy falls from the heavens to join the fight, a reference to descending from the heaven. Of course, Luffy was present with the sun god Nika fruit, and Whitebeard was present with the potential earth god fruit. Another interesting example of a god tied to Marineford is currently in the story we have the Egghead incident. 38 years before that we had the God Valley incident, and 38 years before that we had the incident with Mother Carmel freeing the giants in 866. During this incident, Carmel infiltrates the giants as Sister Carmel, a nun. The sun shines down on her, giving off a divine presence, and she discusses a message from the heaven. Despite the fact we get the impression from the surroundings this is Marineford, it's never actually explicitly stated to be. This could be a big clue that at the time Marineford was going by a different name. The God Valley incident has other connections to Marineford through the characters that were present at the summit. This ties to Inherited Will and the way Oda has historical events in the story reenact themselves. For example, how Joy Boy Nolan and Luffy all freed Tontatas every 400 years. At the Summit War, we had Whitebeard, Garp, Buggy, Shanks, Rogers inherit a Luffy, Zebek's inherit a Blackbeard, and Kaido was said to have tried to attend also. These characters were all either at God Valley or have inherited the will of someone who was present there at one point. The whole war seems to be a runback of the God Valley incident. For example, 4 would-be Yonko were present at God Valley, and 4 would-be Yonko were at the Summit War. Kobe went on to become a hero of the Marines, as we know, and Garp got that exact same name from the God Valley incident. We can also find clues in the landscape too. Except for Wano, like pillars in the corner, Marineford is stated to be completely made out of bricks and steel, suggesting almost all of the natural features that were native to the island are now gone. In addition to this, we see this crescent moon shape as the port at Marineford. This matches our new friend Garling, whose hair design is also a crescent. We also see the depiction of a dark clouded sky present in both Marineford and the God Valley incident, and the incident in which Carmel freed the giants too. We also heard families lived on Marineford, which is another connection, as celestial dragons had slaves there and so likely also had their own families there. Slavery is another connection between Marineford and God Valley. The triangle made by Enies Lobby, Impel Down and Marineford mirrors the triangular trade of the 6th century. This was the trade route used by the slaving industry in real life, and the Toria current, which controls the water inside the Gates of Justice, is inspired by the trade winds. These winds enabled ships to travel much faster within the triangle. We also have the Oxloyd Bell, or Oxbell. This was found on Marineford and was used to ring farewell to the passing year and bring in the new year. It's heavily inspired by the real-life Lutein Bell. Here's an open statement at the top of the Lutein Insurance webpage. These guys have a bad reputation for insuring the slave industry, so the Oxbell is definitely a nod to this slavery bell by Oda. Now, we know there were slaves at the God Valley incident, but if you're familiar with Den Den theories, you'll know I strongly believe God Valley is where slaves were taken to be experimented on, particularly experiments dealing dealing with lifespan and extended life. This is looking ever more likely with Darling looking like Kureha. This is where it gets wild though. Firstly, during the war, Sengoku appeared relatively calm about what was happening at Marineford and didn't seem to mind people fighting. However, as soon as Blackbeard started destroying the island itself, Sengoku freaked out and rushed to stop it happening. He says a couple red flags also, the strangest of which is, you don't know what you're doing, when Blackbeard starts wrecking the ground. Mixed with his reaction, this makes for a suspicious panel for sure. Furthermore, when Akainu is smashed into the ground by Whitebeard, it's later shown he finds a tunnel underneath Marineford. This suggests there is something below Marineford itself, which I think are the ruins of God Valley, similar to what we've seen in Wano, Alabasta and Water 7. So, in conclusion, I think that during the God Valley incident, the island was leveled, in its rubble the world government built Marineford. All that's left to God Valley are the 4 pillars of the corners of the island, and its name was changed to ensure the name would never appear on maps again. Anywho, dudes and dudettes, always a pleasure. Huge love to Preach for picking this up. Drop a comment about what worked, what didn't, and I'll catch you over at Den. Sub to Preach, do all that stuff, show him the love. Peace.
Great theory, and I love all the connections you pointed out, and after going in with an open mind, I do think it's possible that Marineford is God Valley. At the very least, I'm intrigued to see how Marineford will further parallel God Valley when we learn more about the incident. Guys, make sure you go check out Den Cushy. He's a smaller creator, he's a smaller channel, but if you like what he said here today, go to his channel, show him some love, and make sure you subscribe. Alright, so this next guest is someone who is a true blessing in the One Piece community. I have the absolute highest of praises for this man because he's the greatest streamer in the community. You can tell this dude does everything he does purely out of love for the game. His passion, his excitement, his genuine hype, it's all so refreshing. Such a positive and kind voice in the community, and anytime there's a new chapter, he's my go-to reaction streamer because his energy is goated. A true legend, and that is the GOAT, King Recon.
Ever since the phenomenal, game-changing chapter 967 dropped, and we were finally treated to that wonderful panel of Roger and his entire crew laughing as they saw whatever it was that was before them that we know as the One Piece. Ever since we got that, I haven't been able to stop thinking about how the Straw Hats are going to react once we get to Laugh Tale. And the reason for that is because Rayleigh in Sabo already stated that perhaps the Straw Hats are going to be able to come up with a different answer than they did. And I wonder if it starts with the way that they react to the events of the Void Century. Because obviously, we have certain people within our crew, such as Robin and now Luffy, that are going to have direct connections to the individuals in the past. So I wonder, I'm going to assume that Oda wants to recreate that iconic panel and create a parallel with the entire crew laughing in joy as they experience Joy Boy's story, right? But what about if they don't? What about if we don't get a recreation of that panel, and instead their reaction is something completely different? And that is something that was brought to my attention from Yamato reacting to Luffy's dream. Because once Yamato figured out what Luffy's dream was, Ace's first thing was, oh, don't laugh at that. And Yamato was like, yo, I would never laugh at such a thing. So I wonder if such a thing would play out here again, where maybe Luffy, instead of laughing, he would be like, how could I possibly laugh at something like that? Whether it be because it's a tragic tale, or because, you know, perhaps something so insane was said that, you know, everybody started laughing like, yo, this guy's crazy, right? But maybe Luffy and him will be on the same wavelength. You're like, no, I'm not gonna laugh at him. That's my dream too. Or maybe, you know, the other Straw Hats will look at Luffy and be like, yo, doesn't that have something to do with your dream as well? Because I've always had the assumption, especially after chapter 1060, that we might get a bigger clue towards Luffy's dream based on whatever we get in the Void Century. So the reaction to what the One Piece is by the Straw Hats is something that I'm very, very interested in, because it feels like the way that they respond to the Void Sentry, the way that they respond to the One Piece treasure, the events that take place on Laugh Tale, that is going to, like Whitebeard said, lead into what turns the entire world upside down. Rayleigh bringing up the possibility that they could come up with a different answer than they did. What exactly does that mean, right? Whatever that means, I think we're gonna see the threads of that. I mean, I'm sure that the entire course of the journey is going to be the reason why they come up with a different answer. But in particular, the way they respond to that Void Sentry flashback, it might not be the parallel that we're all expecting, as awesome as that would be. Who knows? But I just wanted to present that scenario because I think it's very, very interesting for the Straw Hats to have a different conclusion, or at least a different reaction to the events of the Void Sentry than that of Roger, which potentially is the reason why Oda decided to show us the Roger flashback first and how they reacted to the One Piece. So whenever we see what takes place with the Straw Hats, potentially it is going to be something different. Of course, this is going to be a monumental thing that is going to be a very joyous occasion, you know, and the quote-unquote end of this legendary adventure. So of course, because it's One Piece, we're expecting it to be not only just a legendary moment, but a very happy and incredible scene with the entire crew all rejoicing and, you know, living and remembering and reminiscing on multiple different things. But I'm not gonna throw out the possibility that they react, even if it's just a little bit differently, to the events of that flashback.
Listen, Recon, as a fan and as a fellow content creator, that was great. I really do think we could see a different reaction, since even Rayleigh said maybe the Straw Hats will come to a different conclusion. I think Robin is really the key because she's the most knowledgeable about history, and I feel like she could be someone who decodes a different hidden layer in the Poneglyph's message. With her vast knowledge and as a prodigy, this would be a big moment climaxing all of her life's work, especially because Rayleigh told that to her specifically. And as a huge Robin fan, I'm all for seeing her interpretation and view on Laugh Tale. So before I present my own One Piece theory, I just want to give a huge thanks and appreciation to everyone who participated in this collab video. This is really what One Piece is all about. Community coming together and having a fun time discussing the series that we all love so much. So make sure you go subscribe to their channels and show them some love. I'll leave the links to everyone in the description. So the theory that I'll be presenting is a Skypiea theory. Skypiea was an arc that was so secluded from the rest of the world, being in the sky. And because of this, the characters in the Skypiean culture have never really made a return to One Piece's story, unlike other arcs. But the biggest travesty to come from this is Dios. Dios are lost to Skypiea, and they were so cool. Being one of Skypiea's own unique technology, Dials were never really expanded on too much, and after Usopp used them in a couple fights against Luffy and Perona, we never saw them again. But if you remember, Dials were absolutely broken. I mean, Wiper killed Enel with the insane power of the reject dial. That was until Enel literally kickstarted his own heart, flexing his godly power. If Enel wasn't a broken Logia, he would have been done for. Wiper even says how the reject dial's power was so great that even he himself could die from using it. But the biggest question I have from all of this is, who on earth created this mysterious technology? Where did the dial technology come from, and will it ever return? Why are they only found in Skypiea? In chapter 257, Gonfall speaks about the power of destruction that will be used from the powerful dial technology. He explains how a simple impact dial, if used properly, is enough to kill an average person. Legends tell of other amazing dials wielded by ancient warriors of the Sky Island that are far more powerful from this one. And one example he gives is the reject dial that Wiper used, which Gonfall claims is 10 times more powerful than the impact dial. And the dials in this chapter are even compared to military weapons. Now, in One Piece, when something is called ancient, this also gets me thinking back to the Void Century. So is it possible that the dials were created during the Void Century era, a time when technology was so advanced? And so it got me thinking, what if Devil Fruits are the successors to the dials, making dials very early creations to what eventually would become Devil Fruits, the ability ability to embody your desires through eating these perfected fruits. For years now, I've been saying that devil fruits were actually created by scientists during the Void Century, a time when technology was more advanced. And then this theory became a lot more plausible when Vegapunk explained that the Ancient Kingdom was a highly advanced society through futuristic technology that's been lost to history. So looking at the different dials, flame dials could potentially allow you to shoot and breathe fire by holding something specific and unleashing it when the time is right. The Milky dial allows you to fly, shooting air through the sky, as we see Gadatsu attach these to the bottom of his shoes and shoot up in the sky like a rocket. The lamp and flash dials release light in both a controlled and explosive outburst. I could also see these become devil fruits in the future, like Ace's flame fruit, Kizaru's light fruit, or Shiki's float fruit. And I know this may seem like a bit of a reach, but if we think about the shells that are tied to dials, and many of these shells have a similar devil fruit like spiral look to them, maybe the shells themselves inspired the spiral design for devil fruits. Now what intrigues me is the raw potential of the dials. We can assume that Impact Dials was only one of these ancient dials that the warriors used, since it was the only one example we got from Gonfall, and this implies there was many more. So with how powerful the Impact Dial was, imagine the other dials that could have existed 800 years ago, and how many of these could have been even leagues stronger than the Impact Dial. You know, back in the days of the Ancient Kingdom, things just seemed to be absolutely massive. I mean, we have Zunisha, a giant elephant, Shirahoshi, a giant mermaid princess ancient weapon, there's the Sea Kings, giant sea creatures who've survived the downfall of the Ancient Kingdom, and there's also giants and the Oni race of ancient giants who once existed during that era, and whatever the hell Oarz and his family lineage was. And speaking of the ancient giants, did you know that the ancient giants once existed in Jaya 400 years ago? We can clearly see this massive giant Oni, which looks something like a Oarz-sized beast on the ancient map of Jaya, which was at least 400 years old. And the reason I bring this up is because could you imagine how powerful a giant dial could be if given to an ancient giant? It could possibly have the power to potentially wipe out entire towns. These would have been true military weapons, ancient giants already being so naturally powerful, so they could withstand something like a dial. And we know Pluton was stated to have the power to one-shot an island. So I wonder, what if Pluton has these giant dial-like cannons attached to it? Or maybe once Luffy reaches Laugh Tale, the crew discovers some giant cannons that excites Frankie and Usopp. We brought up this idea before in the Laugh's Tale video, but after rereading Skypiea recently, it really made me wonder about the insane ancient war during the Void Century and how crazy it could have been. We've also seen how dials are so effective against enemies who can't comprehend what they are. For example, like in Usopp's fight against Perona. So imagine this being implemented into an actual large-scale army of D-Clan members back in the day against the Celestial Dragons. At the end of the day, dials are way more mysterious than even devil fruits, so I really wish we get to see more of them. I want to see new, more powerful dials and get explanations for how they work and how they're created. And maybe, just maybe, we'll see them one day if we visit another Sky Island during the post-time skip era. And that island could be God Valley. Click on this ultimate God Valley theory to find out why we believe God Valley still exists as a Sky Island.